Hi, everybody. Welcome to our office hours. I'm super thrilled to be here with Cameron and Sean, two of the people I most admire in annual giving and higher ed. Welcome, Cameron and Sean. We've been working on a fun project um, the last few months. Would you like to say hi and introduce yourselves before we dive into the roadblocks topic?
Sure.
Cameron or Sean? Yeah.
I was going to have Cameron go first. So this.
Sounds good. I am Cameron Hall, and I serve as the Executive Director of Annual Giving and Lead Generation at the University of South Carolina. In that role, I wear a number of hats, but I get to provide support to two departments, the Annual Giving Programs and Services Department, which oversees most of our direct marketing campaigns, our special campaigns like Giving Day and employee giving and student giving. And then also our donor experience officer team, which we're building out and really honing in on right now to be more affinity-based in our fundraising approach. And I also serve as one of the senior managers of the Division of Development here, which is particularly why I was interested in joining with this survey and this project as we think about how do we increase the number of donors to our organizations to start to better align with the revenue that we're raising.
Fantastic. Thanks, Cameron. Sean?
Sean Devendorf, Senior Director of Annual Giving at Tufts University, and overseeing the annual giving programs. And we are a quasi-centralized or decentralized shop, whichever way you want to look at it. But we work across the university on giving days, or online giving platform, volunteer management systems, omni-channel marketing appeals. Also manage our frontline annual giving leadership gifts team. And Cameron, we're about year 2 of our donor experience officer program. So happy to talk about that if it's helpful at some point. What DPP does and what we all do is learn from each other constantly. And we will be launching a campus content creators program in the fall too, as a way to engage students in ways that hopefully they are more excited about engaging with us on development and engagement efforts rather than your classic telefund program. So looking for people that can help talk to us about that, and excited to kind of get into a little bit more of why we're here, how this process started. Louis and I have been talking about donor participation for years.
Ever.
I guess it is the name of the group, so it does make sense that we're here talking about that. But it was that macro question of what are our struggles, what are the commonalities, how can we learn from it, and then how can we collectively look to overcome them so we're not working on these things individually at our schools.
Yeah, exactly. And if anybody wants to join or check us out at the very least, you'll see from the two gentlemen here that it's a pretty cool group, smart people. But we've been talking about this, like you said, Sean, and I guess, like, recapping, this has been several months in the making, almost half a year. And when we first got together, do you recall, both of you, like what we set out to do? I kind of remember we were talking about creating like a resource guide or something like that. And Sean said, well, wait. Why don't we start figuring out, asking people what problems are or something like that? No? Was it?
Yeah,
I think it was pretty much along those lines. Yeah. Thinking through some type of guide that would help in the donor participation project. But then I think we had to make the pivot to first understand what the issues to donor participation, or what the roadblocks, as the name of the paper is, to donor participation project are, before we can address what a guide might look like to address some of those problems.
Yeah, I think it was that idea, and we were hypothesizing, like, here's what I see at my institution, or here's some things that we see. Who else is thinking about this? Where have people found success? Where are people seeing different roadblocks? And that was kind of, I know we started, I think there was one tangent of that kind of fun tech stack, like what's the fundraising technology that we're using that's helping us overcome this? And that is a separate subgroup of DPP. Happy to talk to people about that, but we've had some good meetings on fun tech. But it was that overall kind of, what are the categories that we should be thinking about to really move the needle on alumni participation? Why is it important? and starting to segment out and seeing if some of the things we were thinking were commonalities and kind of learning from other schools. So then we could really, I think what we all need when we have these conversations, we get these questions, well, what are peer schools doing? What's working somewhere, what's not working somewhere. So we wanted to better equip all of us with that knowledge and platform to be able to make those conversations happen at our institutions.
Exactly. And I'd like to invite everybody who's here with us. If you'd just like to say hi, we're a pretty tight-knit industry, right? So it would be great to see. Perry mentioned earlier that she was around. So welcome, Perry. And as everybody has noticed, we have lots of different groups going on. Sean is leading that group that meets to talk about fundraising technology. So you're very, very much welcome. So Sean and Cameron, we started talking about how to overcome, how to grow donor participation. And we ended up saying, let's do a survey. What's a good next step to share with our colleagues here? Do you want to go into the surveys, show that to them, maybe? And I know you both were super involved in. Let me put up the final survey on the screen. We had several sessions about this, and maybe we can share a little bit of the rationale, then go into the results, and then invite people to weigh in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. And as you're getting that pulled up, I'll just share, obviously we all know that U.S. News is no longer counting for now alumni participation as it's been known in the survey or in the report rankings. And, will that impact how we work and think about alumni participation at our schools? And so I think this is a perfect time to have the results of this survey as we've been thinking about this and to really kind of dig in on how do we reframe alumni participation rather than chasing a number, but building meaningful philanthropic connections that we can then nurture over time. But I don't think in any way that diminishes the importance of having a large number of alumni giving to your institution in a way that connects them back to it. I don't think we should lose that regardless of what rankings are being tracked or not.
Yeah, and I would add on to that, that the focus from my perspective is not just alumni participation, it is overall donor participation. Are there pockets of community donors? All of our institutions serve various communities that could be a part of this as we really think about the shift from just alumni participation over to what more holistic fundraising, donors that we can cultivate over time to drive longer term health for the institution. And so I think there's some really good results that we've seen within this that will be interesting to point out today.
Awesome. And one final small detail is that there's lots of efforts going on that are trying to address donor participation. And anybody who's on LinkedIn hears no end of advice and all the things we're doing wrong. I think kind of prodded by both of you, we started this on the other end. Let's see where people are finding success. I just wanted to mention, you've both already talked about this, but I wanted to mention how I think this approach is somewhat unique. And also I wanted to welcome Jordan, Jessica, Tim, Steve, who are here with us. So without further ado, let's just dive right into it. Gentlemen, I'm not seeing you as I scroll through this. So if you want to point out anything in particular, maybe the first step is that it was an anonymous survey, right?
Yes.
It was anonymous. It went out. I think that's about around 75 people completed the survey in total. So we had a good cross representation of institutions represented in the survey. And in the invite, I believe the survey results were included. Is that correct, Louis?
We have the survey. Yes. I mean, we shared the spreadsheet. You're right. We shared the spreadsheet with the ongoing results several times with various groups of people, the donor participation project at large, and people who responded to the survey. And also we'll get to this toward the tail end of the conversation, but it's still open, and we'll definitely welcome everybody's input. So yeah, we felt it would add value to make it anonymous. And then we tried to make sure that we were getting people in the industry. So first section, the budget question. Did Cameron and Sean, or maybe people who are here in the chat with us today, did you have any preconceptions though that were proved or disproved when we did the survey? So like, some of you contributed questions and you thought, oh, for sure everybody's going to say blah.
I was shocked that roughly 40% of the respondents said for this. I just knew when we put in that question, a lot of people were going to disagree with that, which 44% did disagree, and 17 were undecided or doesn't know what a sufficient budget might look like. But I was just shocked at the amount of people who felt that they have the adequate budget to pursue donor participation.
That was interesting, right?
It really was. And as we dug into the survey, we'll talk about it as we go through. So I'm not doing any spoiler alerts here, I don't think. But it is that common theme that we saw, that people had the budget was there, but the alignment, the buy-in, and then the skill sets that we're looking for to drive digital engagement were not there as much as budget dollars were. So it's not something, one of the first takeaways, like you can't just throw money at it. There needs to be a very strategic plan in place, and the people with the right skills to operate that plan, with the right buy-in from leadership within your team, division, institution, campus, volunteers, and alumni base as a whole. So it's a very simplified version of that budget question.
Yeah. So definitely it's layered, right? And we'll get into kind of the recommendations that led us to. But so, yeah, the budget question, the staff question here, that had like very clear results, right?
Yes. For the staffing, I think it was interesting to see that a lot of people feel that they don't have the right staff with the right skills. I think in a future iteration, if we do this, we would need to better correlate the budget to the staff to determine, are they saying that they don't have enough staff? Because if there's budget for it, then you should have enough staff, or the current staff that they have just does not have the right skills in the modern noise economy to get as many donors as they can in that donor participation number. And so I think that's something that I'd like to see if we do this again, to really hone in on where that sort of breakdown between the budget and the skills. Otherwise, we can sort of interpret it right now as maybe they have a good staff size. It's just the staff that they have may not have the skills necessary to compete in the donor participation arena today.
Did you call it the noise economy?
Yeah.
I love that. Cameron Hall, guru, industry guru, creating these terms. It's amazing. For those who are listening in, would you like to weigh in? Maybe clarify some of these. Like, do you think are you still feeling that it's hard to hire? I'd be interested in that question. We ran this survey back in November, and I don't know if this has changed for people. And number two, do you feel like you have the right skills? Any thoughts would be tremendously welcome. So we asked some of these questions, and I'm going to show the white paper in a second that we created along with link for everybody. This was interesting to me, and I think maybe it was Cameron who suggested it, and I may be wrong, but I'd love to hear from you why you both think that this is an important question.
Yeah, I think it gives us a sense of the sort of management expectations of the development staff that they do have. Those who are in the central management modality, what level they have buy-in. Is the buy-in greater there because they have a direct line to their VP and a direct line to their president, versus those who are in the hybrid model, who may have dotted line reports to different colleges and units, or fully report to different colleges and units. And if the buy-in changes based on that, because of the competing interests of each of those departments and units within the college versus those that are completely decentralized. How are you managing donor participation when everyone is sort of doing their own thing within the university? And so I think it was good to get a sense of how that's driving the buy-in for donor participation, how that's driving the overall effort towards donor participation.
Yeah, I never thought of that, how that structure changes. And Sean, you said you are almost centralized?
We are kind of quasi-centralized or decentralized,
4.5.
whichever kind of way you look at it. There are some functions that we have run through our central team, and then some school-based functions that is embedded within each unit. But we've moved more in the direction of centralizing more of the functions.
That's great, and maybe that weighs into some of the answers later. And now, Cameron, your response today helps me understand some of the comments. We've worked on this sync, but also async, and Cameron was commenting that it would be nice to look at the responses by level of centralization, and that makes so much more sense to me today. We looked at the relationship between advancement and the communications function, whether it be central or inside of advancement, and we'll talk about the results in a second. And then we jumped into some open-ended questions, which I don't know if this was very scientifically sound because we put 3 questions in each area and people responded to whatever they liked. We got lots of good feedback, I think. And we'll go into that in a second. Yeah. Any other comments, Son or Cameron, about kind of the survey and before I go into the results?
I think just that it was this was our first attempt, so it's really something we want to build on moving forward. Want feedback on and what questions should we be asking? What questions do people want to get answers to? So this is very much a living document process. It's really just all of us coming together to make this happen. So thank you for being here to talk about it.
Yeah, so let's give this a try now, but this is the link. I don't know how it's going to show, and I don't want to cover both of you, but in a while, when we go back to full screen, I'll share this QR code. I know it's weird to share a QR code on a screen because you're already in a computer, but the Google links are just horribly long. So we'll put this out there for you in a second, and hopefully some of you will decide to share your thoughts. Let me go straight into the results. I have to say we were all involved in writing this, but Ashley Budd had a hand in formatting it, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. It's incredible how smart you can look when you kind of dress up right and put your documents all, looking nice. So we've set up this report for everybody who's listening. I want to recognize everybody who's here. Ashley Budd, Sean Devendorf, Cameron Hall, Julie Knight, and Sean Scanlon. So this was kind of the beginning team. And as Sean said, it's more like just the nucleus. We're hoping to grow this and to involve you. We're trying to do that more bottom-up approach, kind of seeing what problems you have, seeing common points, and trying to work to solving them. So I can just start scrolling if any of you want to observe anything that we haven't mentioned. Survey results are available here, spreadsheet. So we're trying to do this in a pretty transparent way. I think, maybe to keep this kind of not so boring and let people have the resources to look at it, we can look at the highlights of this. And then if you guys want to point me in a specific direction, we can do that and then just ask for questions. These were kind of the highlight. Would you feel like you're in a position to share a little bit more about, why we said that advancement leaders need guidelines to demonstrate the ROI of donor participation efforts? Why did we feel that was, a common blocking point?
I think one of the reasons is, what we do in annual giving, some of the broader base appeals, outreach, the ROI is different than if you are raising major gifts. If someone makes $1 million gift, that still counts as one donor versus what we're doing and trying to inspire thousands of donors to give back every year. So the ROI is different. It's a longer term gain. It's a longer term investment that you're making in the institution. This isn't a scientific study that we did, but looking at some data, it was the majority of our 1 million+ donors made their first gift within 5 years of graduation, and it was under $50 when they made that gift. So it's like that mindset of what we're doing now to build a philanthropic relationship with the university will, not only have some immediate returns and the fact that many gifts add up to a large amount, but also in that mindset of the building the pipeline and really defining what that means. That if we can start to quantify that and say, if we have, I'll make up numbers again, if we have 1,000 donors within the first 10 years of graduation who are already giving $250 or more, through our modeling and what we know about the industry, we can predict that with good stewardship and growth, that pipeline will yield X number of $100,000 donors in 5 to 10 years. So if we can start to really quantify the pipeline, I think that will help us so much in why donor participation and strategic upgrading and engagement of donors builds that pipeline for future campaigns. I think that's a little bit of the piece that we're missing. And I'd love to hear from other people if they've really found success in defining pipeline and really structuring that in a way that we can make some of those assumptions for the investment now in what we're doing to engage donors.
Super valuable. Thank you, Sean. And we wouldn't need to reinvent the wheel, right? At every school. Like I'm thinking that if we were able to share some ideas, there'd be, 3 or 4 models that would work for most everybody. Of course, we talked about right-sizing the budget. That's an area where we felt that more guidance was needed. So this was a little bit. Does anybody want to share kind of we heard from one of the research members some research that she'd done, that her institution had done privately. Do you remember?
Yes. One of our colleagues in the research group shared that I think prior to her starting there, her AVP that oversees her area did a sort of similar survey with colleagues, their peer institutions, to basically determine the number of annual giving staff as they were trying to redesign the annual giving staff to alumni. And so I think it's on the last or second to last page of the document, but I think they found that the average was close to 1 annual giving staff per 3,400 alumni. Since hearing that, I've combed through all of the SEC school sites to do sort of a similar study to see where we benchmark.
Really?
And we're right in the center of that, so it looks to be in good shape for us. Here at USC, we just got to get people in the seats is our hall. But I think that was a really good approach because that's something that some alumni relation shops have done for years to really calculate how they can engage and have enough events to engage the alumni population. And so I even think it was, you can pull that number from the VSC on the alumni relations side, but it really hasn't existed on the annual giving side. And so seeing institution going out and really thinking about, do we have the right fundraiser officers per alumni to really engage those groups was an interesting tidbit to know.
I shared this knowledge that we learned together with a colleague recently. She had 2 staff members for an alumni base of 120,000. So she said we have a while to go to get to staff member per 2,000 or 3,000 alums. But that was interesting to me in our conversations and in the survey, that this work, it does have an ROI, which is a little bit harder to prove, but it also takes, you can scale it some, but if you scale it too much, it starts to degrade. No?
And Louis, I saw one question come in from Perry a few minutes ago. She's asked, even within a centralized model, one obstacle that I've seen is something that she's calling the AVP Hunger Games, I like that, where internal conflict competition blocks collaboration and innovation. Just wondering if any of us or anyone who's tuning in for this has had experience with that.
So this is competition among AVPs that maybe one of them has annual giving and the others have other areas.
It sounds like that's probably what's happening, and I think that goes back to what we see. We'll talk about more in the survey. Is just that idea of alignment and buy-in. Like if that is happening from leadership, then the AVP level will be kind of on the same page. Like we know this is the direction our leadership wants to go. And when I say leadership, I mean president, provost, like that level of leadership that would impact the AVPs. And I think that's what we found was missing from a number of institutions, is that when we were surveying them, they're saying, I might have some division buy-in, but I don't have the campus-wide buy-in to how to do this. So,
yeah. Sorry, please go ahead.
No, that was trying to answer a bit, but Barry, if you have a follow up or Cameron, anything that you want to add, please feel free.
Yeah. So this is one question that relates to that, where, there's support. I don't know if this kind of what this means really, because if you have is this like psychological support? Because then, if you don't have people,
sort of what I take it as, because I think this question, if we're looking at sort of the mindset of answering, it's probably getting at, they think that the people who within the organization, or particularly those that work within the division of development, understand the importance of having donors and donor participation. And so there is that level of buy-in, but across the institution as a whole, I think where we see the disagree percentage, which is at about 44%, I believe. That's likely from groups who are thinking, I guess, putting my own personal experience to this, if we look at development and compare it to our colleagues over in enrollment management, in admissions, right? And we're thinking about the level of buy-in towards admissions. Everyone tends to understand the core processes of what admissions is, increase the incoming class year over year, or at smaller organizations, to really make sure that they meet that cap that they need to meet year over year and to retain, get students to matriculate. I don't know that that is the same thought process for development, even though the work is pretty much similar to what the admissions and enrollment management is doing. We're following retention metrics like they are, and all of these other pieces, but it isn't as interwoven through the organization, whereas you can throw a stone at any organization and I guarantee you can find faculty members, alumni members who are helping with the admissions piece and are willing to do so, but that may not be the case for the development piece. And so I wonder if that is what the 44% who disagreed with that statement is sort of saying, when we compare it to other portions of the institution that seem to have stronger affinity and buy-in, because the metrics are a little bit clearer year over year on what they're doing. And not to say that our metrics aren't clear, that's where buy-in starts to grade at the organizational leadership level.
Yeah, Cameron, I love that comparison of thinking about the admissions office, and everyone understands what they do. All faculty, staff can talk about why the institution is a great place to be, to learn, to live, but you're right, there is not that same comfort level with development across all staff members. And are they all comfortable saying, why would making a gift of any size be important to the institution? And, why is participation important to, why should people give? You're right. There's just a complete different level of comfort with those two ideals. And they're so close in terms of, in both instances, you're talking about the importance of the institution, what it does, what it opens, ideas it helps create. It's just a slightly different ask at the end. One is, and apply to be a part of this community, and the other is, and make your gift to be part of it, to help this community. So I think that's something that we can explore more. I really like that idea and framing.
Let's see if we have any more that speak to these like institutional roadblocks. We've talked about the staff. It's nice to see it in a chart because it's so dramatic, but I'll go over it. Ooh, this one was good, right? Because Sean, you've mentioned buy-in, and then you said yes, but I'm talking about buy-in like by the president and the provost. And maybe that speaks to the wider campus culture. And you both touched on that a moment ago. So the feeling among a large majority of professionals is that people just don't get it, right? The campus at large.
Yeah, that was a significant portion of people who really do feel that the organizations just don't, the culture doesn't understand what the work needed to drive donor participation. 73% either disagreeing or strongly disagreeing with that statement is an overwhelming majority. And so I wonder why that is within our campus cultures.
Yeah, and we haven't reached that point yet, but I'd love to hear both of your thoughts. What can we do about this?
Good question. I think at some level it's going to have to be more educating on the work that we do and being. I think one of the benefits that we talked a little bit about admissions versus advancement, and this isn't true at every shop, but I can speak to almost all of the places where I have worked in development. Advancement has been the shop that is located off campus or in some hidden off campus area or on campus in a basement somewhere type of division where it's harder for us to have the same level of presence that say student affairs gets, admissions gets, enrollment management get, because they're are appealing to the students. But I think that also drives how our campus culture also sees us because they don't see us. Right now, my office is 3 blocks away from campus. And so I have to drive, get a parking pass, drive over to campus to meet with my colleagues. And I think that may also affect some of this too. Or if you work for a foundation, then which I think would be something we should look at in a future study, is the breakdown of those who actually work for the institution, those who work for private institutions, and then those who work for a foundation. That's probably also driving this because that way you work for a completely separate organization at that point. And so what connection do you really have to the campus in order to be able to teach and train them in these processes? And so that may affect the campus culture piece that we're seeing here and why so many believe that they don't have that buy-in or understanding of the work needed across the university as a whole.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, makes sense. And it's just also the idea just of internal marketing. If we think about marketing to our constituencies, but how do we market ourselves internally, and really focusing on that? So I'd love to hear what other people do with that. Many of us have community staff appeals, and those are helpful. But I do wonder, are there more ways that we think internally about our staff and faculty as ambassadors, and really focus on how we get the message out of connecting with alumni and just really bring it up a level to that engagement piece, which I've seen come through this survey a few times. Is just that need for that top of the funnel increased engagement before we can even get to the giving conversation. And the engagement starts, I think, at home and starts internally and continues to build out from there.
Thanks, Sean. I've taken the screen share off. I thought we could kind of go into the portion where we invite people who are here with us to either weigh in, to fill in the survey. Kind of what is our our next steps? What are our next steps? And I think we're going to present these findings in a few places next year. But what would you think is would be most helpful to our sector? No. That came out of this? Like, do you have a vision for that? We talked about recommendations. So, could that be one of the places where this goes? I have an anecdote related to kind of when we're in the middle of the pandemic and we had a session on DEI and diversity and engaging groups. And a lot of the feedback we heard when we jumped on that call on DPP is, well, we're doing analysis. And lots of us were like, yeah, okay, now this is great, but let's do something about it. So I'd love to hear just thoughts on the, what does this look like? Is this resources? Do you feel like we're missing resources? Are there resources that exist at CASE or AFP or elsewhere that maybe we should shine a light on? I don't know if you have any thoughts. I'm just throwing this out there. It was completely unplanned.
Yeah.
Let's see, I'll move you around, Sean. You'll go to the top.
I was just seeing if anyone was had any comments from off screen. To kind of think that through a little bit.
It's a hard one.
I mean, I think what would be helpful is at least having, we can probably create a one-pager out of this. Like, here's what we've heard. So to kind of equip our annual giving colleagues, advancement colleagues in general, with kind of here's how people feel in the industry right now. Here's the roadblocks they're seeing. Here's some of the things that we think need to be corrected to help move the needle on this. At the same time, we can also probably get some data. We can look at BSC, who's moved up participation and what is being done differently on those campuses. So what is being done differently that we can take away, kind of compare to what the roadblocks are, what schools are doing who are moving this in a little bit different direction, and kind of learn from, what our sentiment is, but also some facts on who's moving in the positive direction here.
There's a good question from Jessica Chanel Eiler. What does the training for the skill set look like? And that's a good question, because I think at some point we need to, because it came out in the survey, determine what the skill set is needed to drive donor participation, since a good chunk of the respondents currently don't feel as though their staff have the adequate skill set to do so. And so I think we may need to develop sort of a core skill set. And that's hard to say too, because in the field, particularly in annual giving, but there's so many, the communications market is changing so much that there are new skill sets that need to be developed all the time. Like just this past year, I have had to become a ChatGPT prompt engineer to be able to produce some of the things that I've been able to produce while I was managing a small team at a university with over 400,000 constituents. And so thinking about how we adapt and learn new skills and things like digital marketing, which is to us in the nonprofit realm, and particularly in higher education, is still fairly new to a lot of institutions. And so I think we need to sort of sit down and identify what those are. I think as far as other resources, some of this is going to be, I think there's some things that we can look forward to, but also there's some pieces we're probably going to have to wait for. Like I know CASE is still working on the shift to engagement metrics from alumni participation metrics. That's been in the process for over 4 or 5 years at this point. And we're still waiting for the final mark now that we know that U.S. News and World Reports is coming out. And so that may shift what some of these skill sets look like, but also looking in the survey results, it may also shift what some of the metrics and analytics that people need. Because I think that was something else that was highlighted in our findings as well, is do people have access to the right analytics to drive donor participation?
Yeah. And I also think we didn't talk about this too much yet, but it's in terms of training. So much of what we're talking about, like what I was taking away from the survey too, is just in that first level engagement piece.
Yeah.
Are we engaging people in a way that's meaningful, that can yield philanthropic giving? And to get even to that engagement piece, we need to look at our data. I think we just need better kind of data hygiene checklists for how we're approaching our data as a whole for our constituency. Now, and that's not just, do we have email, do we have mailing address, do we have phone, but do we have the ability to communicate with them on those channels? What do our unsubscribe rates look like? If we're having unsubscribe rates, what are we doing to counteract that? We're creating better preference centers, giving people more control over how they want to hear from us. And that data will then inform us and what they are interested in. So it's really looking a step back at, do we have the data? Do we have people that can help us think through those issues? And if we don't have the current skill set, what resources do we have either through our Salesforce Marketing Cloud colleagues? There's so many organizations doing this type of training. I think we just have to be more agile and more proactive than we've been in the past. As Cameron, you said, being a chat GPT expert, that happened in the past 3 or 4 months. 8 months from now, we'll probably have to start thinking about some different social media ad campaign that we don't even know what it is yet. So how do we adapt? I guess what I'm trying to say is how do we as an industry become more adaptable? Because we have to be quicker to change, and we have to be comfortable with change. And that hasn't always been historically the strongest kind of attribute of a large organization.
That was a topic that came up repeatedly in our research group conversations, which was there's probably teams on campus that are using maybe HubSpot or that are using other tools. But part of the difficulty is just being able to collaborate or tap into them. That was one. And we heard from a couple of survey respondents who said, I'm in a state school, or I have bureaucratic barriers to getting new technology or even trying new things that are almost unsurmountable, or it takes me 6 months to, try one more.
It looks like we've got another question from Perry. It sounds like a lot of the issues you've identified in the survey are fundamentally leadership issues and the various levels of leadership reference in this call. So the question is, what does leadership need to learn to make the impact on these obstacles? I would say one, if we're talking about skill sets, it's probably going to be just what Sean was just saying, that we need to be more adaptable as professionals in this field, and we need to be able to attract talent that have the skill sets that we need. If just in looking at a lot of our organizations, a lot of times when we need to positions focus on quote unquote new areas to development, and by that I mean all of the digital things that we're doing, all of the trying to engage young alumni, those are often relegated to a certain salary range or a certain type of position level, when in the corporate world, these are managed by full vice presidents and AVPs, right? People who have the skill set to really, and even in other departments on campus, a lot of times, like in our communication and marketing department centrally, digital engagement falls under an AVP, not under an assistant director. And so really thinking about how we are positioning ourselves and attracting talent that, or even looking at our org charts and trying to reorganize to meet where the current market of trying to attract donors is. And I don't know that development has necessarily done that at a fast enough pace to keep up with where donors are communicating with us now and how we can get in front of donors. If it was not for the pandemic, a lot of us would not even be using Zoom to have donor visits right now, or Microsoft Teams or LinkedIn Zoom calls to even get in front of donor visits. And so knowing that really shapes how leadership should start to view how we move forward and how we reposition some of our org charts to really develop the skill set and the talent needed and attract quality talent who already have the skill set, as opposed to attracting candidates in these lower paid positions who still have a lot of learning to do on the job that we need them to do, and also on the skill set needed to drive these bigger pieces, because that's going to really shape how we can attract the most amount of donors. I think the other piece is they're going to start reshaping how they have communications with their higher ups. VPs and AVPs and EDs all need to start rethinking about how we communicate what's actually needed to drive a greater sense of donor participation. And so really shaping how we are having those conversations with our presidents, with our boards, to give them a greater sense of what the current market looks like and how we need to be adapting to communicate with donors the way they are, instead of relegating a lot of these sort of tasks and skill sets to lower level employees.
Yeah. That all makes really good sense. And I think it's all really good points, and that just made me think of, we need to have leadership be comfortable with moving quickly and failing fast, and needing to be comfortable like that everything we try isn't going to work right away. or it's not going to be perfect the first time. And we have to create safe environments where we want people to test and be able to pivot a little bit more quickly. And we all know how long it might take us to get a new giving platform, through every hurdle that needs to get through to be there. And then maybe there needs to be some adjustments to it. So creating an environment that better mimics the world that our constituents live in, where they're used to things changing or being more adaptable and more personalized. And we need to get there, but we also know that all of those companies make a lot of mistakes along the way, try things that don't work. And we need to be able to do that as well. I think to find the right things that work with our audience, we do need to try things, see what works, what doesn't. Not everything's going to be a win every time, and be comfortable with that, and then learn from that and iterate quickly.
Fantastic. Well, thanks to both of you. Thanks to Perry and everybody else, Jessica and everybody else who asked questions. We're hoping to take this group forward. We're going to take this on the road a little bit. We'll have a bus and everything. It's going to be great. No, but we may be presenting at a conference near you, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. One way to do that is just by filling in the survey. Reach out to any of us here on LinkedIn, please. Cameron Hall on Devendorf. If you have questions, and we can share the link with you. You can also reach out to me or join the donor participation project if you haven't yet. And hopefully we take this on to those next steps. So what does this look? Maybe we come up with, training guidelines, talking points for leadership to share around campus, around donor participation, ways to model the impact of donor participation, like Sean mentioned. So this is us trying to move that needle.
Cool.
Any closing words of wisdom, Sean or Cameron?
Just a general thank you for everyone for being here, for participating in this survey, helping us get where we are. And just please join. We are volunteers working we want to see this industry continue to move forward, and just really, we know our institutions are important places, and we want to see them well supported. So please join, help out. Hope to see you soon.
I would agree with that. Just thank you all for joining us today and for participating in the survey, and for asking questions that get us to think through the findings that we have and how we can continue to move forward with this particular project, as we're really looking to advance the missions of all of our great organizations. So definitely continue to be a part of that process.
Well, I'm super grateful to both of you. You've both been integral. We've been on countless calls to work on this. So thanks to both. I learn every time we meet. So we'll keep working on this, and we'll see you hopefully soon in person. Thanks a lot.
Sounds good. Thank you.